The marine activists at Sea Shepherd have welcomed a new member to their board. Bob Brown, the former Greens leader, is a long-time supporter of the group, especially in its annual battles with the Japanese whaling fleet in the Antarctic.
He's also friends with Paul Watson, the Sea Shepherd chief, who is wanted by Interpol and, as one source puts it, plans to avoid arrest by staying at sea for as long as possible. Bob Brown joins us now from our studio in Hobart. Thanks very much for being with us this morning in your new guise.
Good morning, Michelle.
Now, can I ask you, you're coming onto the board of Sea Shepherd at a rather difficult time when Paul Watson is wanted by various authorities to face charges in Japan. Do you have any reservations about getting on the board at this time?
Well, I've got far greater reservations about the Japanese whaling fleet, which is coming south to kill up to 950 whales in the International Whale Sanctuary off Antarctica, south of Australia. That's illegal, it's violent, it breaches international law, and it's only Sea Shepherd that's going to stand between those defenceless whales and the grenade-tipped harpoons that the Japanese whaling fleet is going to be aiming at them. So I take my hat off to Sea Shepherd. I've admired Paul Watson and Sea Shepherd for 30 years. I think they have done a fantastic job. It's been non-violent. They have never harmed anybody in that process. And I know that they have enormous backing here in Tasmania and across Australia and indeed way beyond these shores.
But as a legislator of some time, I would have thought you would implore people to respect the law, and in this case the law is demanding that Paul Watson face the charges that have been laid against him.
Well, no, he's not charged with anything that I know of. There's been diplomatic to and fro, and there's a red alert, but that's simply because he has broken bail in Germany, and that's not a crime. No, but
the Japanese would like to extradite him so they can charge him if he is back on Japanese soil.
Oh yes, that's right. These are the people who are engaged in criminal activity, killing whales against international law in Antarctica. And the question is really who should be being pursued here by Interpol? And of course it's the Japanese illegal whalers. And the real worry I have is that this time they have armed Coast Guard people, this is men with guns, on their ships coming into the demilitarised zone in Antarctica, while our government and governments elsewhere sit on their hands and allow this international law breaking.
So why does Paul Watson...
you know, it's Sea Shepherd that's upholding the law here.
So if that's the case, then why does Paul Watson need to hide at sea in international waters? If the strength of your argument stands, then surely it would stand in front of authorities.
Well, he's been given a business visa to come here to Australia, and I know he'll be very welcome when he does come to Australia. We need to understand here that the Japanese, who have taken out a legal action in the United States court to prevent Paul Watson going within 500 yards of their whale-killing ships, are abusing international law and using government powers to breach international laws. And here's Sea Shepherd, the David in this David and Goliath contest, standing for the whales and sailing south for the whales. And I'm very pleased in a world in which the environment is being marauded, in which the great whales have been sent so close to extinction, that there is somebody with the gumption to be defending these great whales, which Australians love these days. I mean, there's such enormous feeling, Michelle, for the whales from Australians. I was with the Sea Shepherd venture up to the Kimberley coast just a couple of months ago, where the world's biggest humpback whale nursery is threatened by the world's biggest gas factory. Well, those whales are now headed south, and there's a need for them to be in a sanctuary, and there's a need for the world to uphold its own laws. I don't know why our Australian government won't respond to the calls, including those from the opposition and the Greens, to send a Coast Guard vessel south as this Japanese fleet is sailing south. I'm
glad you mentioned that, because I do want to ask you about that. But just before we do, I just want to ask you one last question about Paul Watson. You're saying there that you expect he would be welcomed in Australia. Are you expecting him to come to port in Melbourne or in Hobart? anytime soon?
No, I've got no direct bead on what Paul's plans are beyond the trip down, as he's done for many years, to defend the whales. The Japanese whaling fleet is a month late. It's sailing, by the way, supported by the redirection of some tsunami funds into this Japanese whaling fleet. The next 2 months we'll see whether or not they are able to kill any whales. It's Sea Shepherd's aim to have zero tolerance to prevent the death of any whales down there. But after that, of course, the question does arise about Paul Watson's ability to be treated properly as a citizen of this planet and as a visitor to this country. And I hope that the government here will make it very clear, having given Watson a business visa, that he'd be free to come to this country and get the usual welcome he always gets here into the port of Hobart, or if he comes into Williamstown in Melbourne or wherever it might be, that most Australians would want to see him given.
Now, you did mention, of course, that the Greens and the federal opposition have called on the government to send a customs vote down to the Southern Oceans to observe what is going on. The government is saying they won't do that because there's no point, that it would be a waste of money, that they've documented what Japanese whaling fleets have done and there isn't a role for customs in terms of being an overseer. Is there really a need for a customs vessel to be there if all it's doing is observing?
Or a naval vessel? Yes, there is. And the government's not being quite direct here. They're terrified of Tokyo. And when they did, under Kevin Rudd, send down a vessel and got footage of this bloody business, of this killing of these helpless whales, Tokyo got so angry that Peter Garrett, the then Minister for the Environment, put that footage in his drawer and it's never been seen since. I mean, it is really a case of the Australian body politic, both the big parties needing to get the gumption to stand up to Tokyo. They're worried, you know, they want a free trade agreement. They're worried that this is going to, in some way or other, annoy politicians in Tokyo. Well, there's a lot of Australians who are annoyed that the Australian government, and indeed the opposition when it was in government, haven't stood up to the Japanese, and it's time they did. There is a World Court action being taken by the Australian government, but that's taking years. And as Adam Bandt has been calling for an injunction to be sought in the World Court to stop the Japanese in their tracks, to have a stay in their execution of these whales, while the illegality they're undertaking is sorted out in the World Court.
Now, this role will no doubt keep you busy, but you've had to been doing plenty of other things and supporting plenty of other causes since wrapping up your parliamentary career. How are you finding life post-Senate?
Oh, it's great. I'm not being asked about slush funds and whose secretary did what. I'm actually, yes, I'm involved in, I'm wonderfully involved in a whole range of issues, including the big threat of mining to the Tarkine, which was the great Tarkine forest and the great Tarkine wilderness here in Tasmania, able to move around, and there's so much to do. I'm very happy, I have to tell you. I'm, of course, very supportive of my Green colleagues in the federal parliament as we move to an election this year. I think they're doing a great job, but I'm also enjoying, I've just ticked over 68, and I'm enjoying the freedom to be able to, for example, go where my heart is to help protect Antarctica and its whales through the agency of this great organisation, Sea Shepherd.
You're certainly looking energised. Bob Brown, thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.